The average retirement age is 64. That means the average American spends 46 years working full-time. After that 64th year, society tells us it's okay to relax. But for how long? The average lifespan in the US is only 77, so you work half a century to relax for 13 years? American culture tells us this is normal, that we have to work until our 60s. It's a myth. You can retire way earlier, even if you have no money saved right now. Here's how you do it. First, you need to figure out exactly what you need to retire. You will need enough money saved or in an investment portfolio to cover your desired lifestyle for the rest of your life, however long that may be. What you will need is going to be different than what anybody else might need. Here's how you can figure it out. Calculate your estimated annual expenses. If you're not sure, what you currently spend is a good estimate, since you're probably going to want to keep up that same quality of life in retirement. The more specific you can be, though, the better. For instance, are you going to want to live somewhere else? Will you spend more time traveling? Will you drive as much or even need to own a car? Ask yourself all these questions and add up your estimated annual expenses. Once you have that number, you can calculate the total amount you'll need to have saved or invested to live off of. The best way to figure out your total, or your nest egg, is the 4% safe withdrawal rate rule. If you don't want to risk running out of money, you should never withdraw more than 4% annually from an investment portfolio. So if you have $500,000 saved up, you can safely withdraw and spend $20,000 a year, which is 4% of that total $500,000. If you have $1 million, you can safely withdraw and spend $40,000 a year. Why 4%? Because it's likely your investments will be able to recover that amount annually, due to appreciation. It also considers inflation and potential taxes. You can use this 4% to find your ideal nest egg, starting from your annual expenses. Simply divide your annual expenses by 4% or 0.04. Let's say you want to spend $60,000 a year in retirement. Divide $60,000 by 4%. You get $1.5 million. So to safely live off your investment portfolio, you need to have $1.5 million saved. Where's the best place to put an important long-term portfolio like this? Experts recommend a stock market index fund like VTSAX or VTI. These funds are designed to match the overall stock market's performance, so they're a lot safer than putting your money into just a few stocks. Whatever you pick, make sure you diversify or pick a fund that will diversify for you. So we know how much we need and where we're going to put it. But how do we get to that $1.5 million in 10 years, starting from $0? You're going to have to save and save and save. We're assuming starting from zero, but of course, if you already have some money saved, you can start with that and get there even faster. Let's calculate how much we need to save every year if we want to have $1.5 million ready for us in just 1 decade. You might think that you just take $1.5 million and divide by 10 to get $150,000. But luckily enough, you won't have to save quite that much every year. Don't forget, you will be investing this money, so it will compound over 10 years while you save up and continue to add to it. The easiest way to figure out the annual savings you need is to use an online investment calculator. There are many available. Just search investment calculator and pick one of the first results. I've included a retirement calculator in the description below. You'll need one that lets you input your target amount, 10 years, and a rate of return. What rate of return should you estimate? 7% is pretty good, but use 6% if you want to be more cautious. Why did we pick 7% for the rate of return? The average stock market returns 10% annually, but inflation will decrease your purchasing power by about 2 to 3%. 7% gives you a more accurate idea of your real return. So if we're trying to save up $1.5 million in 10 years, assuming a 7% rate of return, how much do we need to save annually? You will need to add $105,231.36 to your investment portfolio annually. That's about $50,000 less than without compounding, so make sure you start investing right away. An average savings account will not make early retirement possible for you. $105,000 is still a lot of money to save every year. How do we get there? There are 2 things you must do to retire as early as possible: save more and spend less. One good thing about it is that these 2 things really go hand in hand. If you're spending less, you're saving more. It also means you'll get used to a more modest, frugal quality of life, so you will probably need less annually when you retire. The best place to find good strategies for spending less and saving more is the Financial Independence Retire Early subreddit, aka FIRE. This is a Reddit community where people share strategies and tactics for making the earliest retirement possible. Some of the community members are saving 30, 50, even 70% of their income to retire as early as they can. While you may not want to save 70% of your income, these frugality masters can give you great tips on making your money count. What are some of the top strategies for saving more and spending less? Number 1. Live in the most inexpensive place possible. Rent and the cost of living vary greatly from state to state and city to city. If you can be happy somewhere else that's less expensive, move. Rent eats up most people's budget, so having a significantly lower rent can make your journey to retirement move much faster. A lower cost of living also means that you can save more, spend less, and perhaps even get more bang for your buck on things like dining out and gas. Number 2. Pay cash for a reliable used car. Buying new is pointless, since a new car does not function much better than a car that's a few years old, despite being much more expensive. Don't make a car purchase based on vanity. Get something modest and reliable. Luxury cars not only cost a lot more price-wise, but they cost thousands more every year in maintenance. Number 3. Make sure that if you have a partner, they are on the same page as you with their financial goals. If you choose to have a partner, you will have to work as a team to reach your early retirement victory. If your partner would rather spend more now and retire later, that will make this process much more difficult for you. However, if they are aligned with you and your priorities match up, that could make it even easier to retire early. So make sure you have these conversations early on with potential partners. Additionally, consider that having children will make saving enough money much harder, as it should. When you have a child, you need to prioritize their needs, not make them live as frugally as possible so you can retire early. So make sure to take that into consideration when planning your major life events and retirement goals. Saving more and spending less are the best, but not the only ways you can retire earlier. You could also retire earlier by earning more money, but only if your expenses do not increase as well. For this to work, you have to avoid the phenomenon known as lifestyle creep. This is what happens when you get a better job for a higher pay, so you feel like you need a better, fancier car to drive to work. After all, you have to impress your co-workers, right? So now you have a fancy car with a high car payment and high maintenance costs. But such a nice car shouldn't sit in the driveway. You need to buy a house with a garage. So you get a better, bigger house with a great garage. But a nicer house costs a lot more money, including a mortgage, property taxes, and upkeep and repairs. Now any extra money you were making has been eaten up by your new expenses. That's lifestyle creep. To retire early, if you start earning more, you must do your best to resist the temptation to increase your expenses. How do you make more money? There are the obvious solutions. Get a better job, although that's not always feasible, or get a side hustle. But what if these options don't work for you? Some career paths don't have a lot of opportunities for raises. For example, if you're a teacher, you probably have a fairly fixed raise structure that will require years and years of work to earn even a small increase. One way to potentially increase your income is to move to a state or city where the average compensation is higher. A teacher in South Dakota makes $49,190 on average. If they were to move just one state away to Minnesota, they would make $64,500 on average. Some states offer an even larger increase, like Connecticut, where the average is $80,230. Google search the average wage for people in your industry by state. It's possible that you are in a state or even in a city where your job is not being compensated as well as it could be. If you do consider this strategy, make sure you factor in the cost of living. The states with higher wages will likely also have a higher cost of living. Moving would only be worth it if your increased income is more than the increase in expenses. So take the time to calculate the difference. The number one absolute must-do to retire as early as possible: never touch your retirement portfolio until it's time to retire. Don't take that money out under any circumstances. This means you will also need to have a separate savings account for emergencies, so factor that into your planning. Remember, anytime you take money out of the portfolio set aside for your retirement, you are adding years to your sentence as a full-time worker. If you are considering buying a home as part of your long-term financial goals, but you want to get the best possible deal so you can still save for retirement, watch this video. We'll tell you all the ways you can get a great mortgage, even with crazy high interest rates or poor credit.